Hi, welcome everyone to Nikki Loves Books. I'm Nikki. Thank you all for joining me. Today we will be going over my review of The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. So this is a collection of the novellas for the Throne of Glass series. And if you wanted to go by book numbers, these would be books .1, .2, .3, .4, and .5. Novellas are typically, not always, but typically just additional fun for the fans. A lot of times they're not necessary to understand the main storyline, and so this is true for the Assassin's Blade. So if you really just want to focus on the main Throne of Glass series, so books 1 through 7, you completely can bypass the Assassin's Blade. It's not going to make or break you knowing anything as far as the storyline goes. But if you're a huge fan of Throne of Glass, and specifically Selena, I highly recommend reading The Assassin's Blade. It was a lot of fun, a really enjoyable book. Before we dive into my actual review, I do want to point out that in my book reviews, I don't spend any time talking about things I didn't like about the book. I know a lot of people do that, and that's great. I typically rate books and talk about what I liked about them. I kind of feel like we focus on negative things, and I don't want to spend my book reviews talking about things I didn't like. I'd rather spend things talking about what I did like. So obviously with my book reviews, if I give a book 3 out of 10, obviously I didn't like it, and I probably only came up with 3 things that I did enjoy about the book. So you'll know basically where I stand with the book by how many things I found that I liked about it. So The Assassin's Blade itself, I did give an 8 out of 10, and we'll dive right into the things I did like about it. So right off the bat, The Assassin and the Pirate Lord was novella number 1, so .1, and it introduces Captain Rolfe, who is an extremely enjoyable character in the Throne of Glass series. And so it was really nice to kind of have that backstory of how Selena and Captain Rolfe first got introduced and why they kind of have beef with each other. And it's definitely a lot of beef. Selena definitely ruined some things for Captain Rolfe, but he's an enjoyable character, so it was just nice to see more of him, and then just him interacting with Selena and how he was kind of thrown off by her age and her attitude and their relationship and why it went so sour. And yeah, so The Assassin and the Pirate Lord was one of my favorites. Second thing I enjoyed about The Assassin's Blade was Selena's sticking to her virtues. So she did get a mission where she was supposed to basically be part of the slave trade. And mind you, she is basically indentured to her guild. And so it's not like she could say, oh, I refuse this mission. She's basically has to do these missions to pay off her debt to the guild leader. So Selena basically ruins everything. And I really liked that. She stuck to her virtues. She went ahead and freed slaves, knowing that there would be some serious consequences when she got back to her guild. So definitely her sticking to her morals, her virtues, I thought was really endearing and gives more humanity to her character. So her character throughout Throne of Glass, I think the readers all know that she is a softie, but she does project this badassery, which of course, she's an assassin and she's a very good one. And just hearing that word assassin, people think no morals, they're not going to care, she kills people for a living, but here she is showing her humanity of knowing what's right and wrong and sticking to those ethics, being like, you know what, it's one thing for me to be assigned to kill someone who, probably deserves it, versus slaves, which, there's no circumstance that you can claim that that is a good, good thing to do or an ethical thing to do. So I did appreciate seeing Selena make that decision, and the hell with the consequences. So, third thing that I liked about the Assassin's Blade is the assassin and the healer. So we do see Iran Towers, which we see later on in the series, and it's just one of those magical moments of fate. Here's Selena. She ends up being in this Turtwater town, ends up hating it, and she actually gets to have a very fateful meeting with Uren Towers, and actually is the catalyst for what Uren ends up being in the future books. So I don't know if any of you have had that experience of something happening in real life where the universe just comes together, like something happened that ends up having consequences a long time down the road. And I really like that Sarah J. Maas included something like that, because that can happen. So it was a very fateful meeting where we get introduced to Uren Towers. We get to see, again, Selena do something that is so kind with no expectation of any return, but it gets returned 100-fold down in, by book 7. Uren Towers is basically essential to the world surviving, and it's fantastic. It's really cool to kind of see that interaction, that fate kind of meet out in this world of Throne of Glass. So the fourth thing that I liked about the Assassin's Blade is the novella The Assassin in the Desert, and that one specifically I enjoyed because of seeing the silent assassins. So throughout the Throne of Glass series, the main books, we hear about the silent assassins, but they're not really focused on. They're kind of mentioned in passing. And in The Assassin in the Desert, we actually get to see Selena interact with them, work with them, and train with them. And it was just kind of cool because, again, in the main books, we hear about them, but we don't get to really know about them. So this was getting to know the silent assassins, see what they're like, and they have a very different regiment, training, and morality than the Guild of Assassins does in Ardalan. So it was really interesting to see that comparison, and to see that you can be an assassin but have different values than what the leader of the Guild of Assassins in Ardalan has. And of course we'll talk about more of him later. So before we move on to the next 4 things that I did like about The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas, I do want to remind you all to please subscribe. I will be doing more book reviews as well as book recaps if they were, books in a series that we might need a recap for before we move on to the next book, especially if it's been a while and we don't necessarily want to reread them. But, you know the drill. Just hit that subscribe button. All right. So, the 5th thing that I did like in The Assassin's Blade was Selena's mercy on Ansel. So she was a character who was very prickly. Prickly is a really good term for Ansel. And Selena and her understood each other. Selena is also someone who's extremely prickly. I think that's why I like them both so much. But regardless of what Ansel did, which was completely wrong, she really fucked up. Really, really messed up. And made the wrong call, betrayed, the silent assassins. It was no bueno. Selena showed her mercy. And again, similar to Uren Towers' storyline, is that mercy, so that decision ended up paying it forward. So Ansel was someone else who was also very necessary to the events that happened later on in the Throne of Glass series. And, again, very much like Yaren, it's almost like if Ansel wasn't in the picture, things could have ended up being very different for everyone in Ardaland and beyond. So, and again, it does show Selena's empathy and compassion, her humanity, regardless of being this so-called cold-blooded assassin. So it was much appreciated, and I think it would have been devastating. If Selena went ahead and did kill her, I think that would have haunted her for a long time, because she did find a kinship, a friendship with Ansel. So I did like the fact that, she showed Ansel mercy. And it was really cool to see that backstory, to kind of see the antics that they got into, and then also know why Ansel was an ally of Selena Sardathian. So that was also really cool. So I did appreciate that. One of my absolute favorite things about the Assassin's Blade, so this is number 6, is in the Assassin and the Underworld, Sam and Selena finally get together. So this was something that, obviously, I did read the main books of Throne of Glass first, so I do know that they were ending up together. But it was reading the novellas, I was really kind of like, oh my god, when are they getting together? I need this to happen. And it was really sweet. It was definitely frenemies, becoming lovers in a lot of ways. But we do find out that Sam was in love with Selena for years. And it was very torturous for him to be around her, simply because she had this FU attitude towards him. And he, of course, was like, oh my god, she hates me. Which, hate and love are not opposites. They're very close to each other. So, Selena did have strong feelings for Sam. It was just not exactly what Sam wanted at the time. But eventually they realized that, they're in love with each other. And I wish they got their happily ever after. I really do. Which brings me to number 7. The Assassin and the Empire. That novella does show Sam's brutal death. And I hate to say that that was something I liked, but I am going to have to say that in the sense of, by no means did I want Sam to die, but it was also necessary. Obviously, if you've read the other books, we know that Selena was meant for someone else, and Sam's death played an absolute intricate part in who she was by book 1. And that is the reason why I appreciated the Assassin and the Empire storyline, is because we really needed to understand how shattered Selena was. To fall in love, to have her first love, and then have him killed, soon after that. And it wasn't just that their love broke, it was the fact that they had dreams. They had literally just freed themselves from their debt from the guild leader and the assassins. They then paid to leave the guild. They were going to leave everything behind and go off into the sunset and live a life that they wanted. So it wasn't just the tragedy of losing the person she loved, it was losing her dreams, her hopes, and her life. And it was really imperative for us to understand how brutal that was. And I can say for a fact that I have reread the Assassin's Blade a few times now, and every single time I read about Sam's death, it makes me cry. Like, it is so painful. And, that was Selena's kind of catalyst, of really wanting revenge and doing whatever she could to get back the people that killed Sam. which now brings us to number 8. So, Benrobin. Benrobin is the leader of the Guild of Assassins and has this really messed up, effed up relationship with Selena. He obviously was her savior. He found her when she was a child, but he is abusive on so many levels. But the reason why I put this down as one of the things that I liked was we really got to understand how ruthless he was and how he saw Selena. It was this fucked up version of parent, like father figure, but also like attraction, you know, like you could tell Selena was his favorite. He doted on her, but there was definitely some like sexual tension there, you know, even towards him, which I'm not blaming her for that, but the fact that he was willing to cross those lines and that he had an issue with Selena leaving, but more so being with someone else. You know, he really thought of Selena as something that he owned, even though she's a person, you know, so very abusive, very ruthless, and overall just, you know, so terrible, such a terrible human being. And, you know, if an author can have you experience strong feelings towards a character, that is some damn good writing, you know. So I definitely give her a lot of credit for, you know, making this sleazy yet charming man, and I just hate him, just absolutely hate him. So really good job, Sarah J. Maas, on that. You know, and going back to the one about Sam's death, you know, really good job on Sarah J. Maas just being able to pull at those heartstrings. That is a very powerful thing to do with words. So overall, I gave The Assassin's Blade an 8 out of 10. And just know I will be reviewing the rest of the Throne of Glass series. I will also be doing recaps for all the books. So hopefully you'll subscribe and see those in time. I do work full time, so I can't dedicate everything to my book reviews, but I'm trying. And as always, leave a comment. I would love to hear what your favorite things were about the Assassin's Blade, or if you didn't like it. And you know, I was actually surprised I did like the Assassin's Blade, simply because I don't generally enjoy short stories. I typically hate them. I think it's something about I don't feel connected to the characters. But the Assassin's Blade was really, really good, and I love Selena. So I think it was also that she was a star in all the novellas, you know, it's her story. So, but let me know if you like short stories, if you enjoyed The Assassin's Blade, if you didn't enjoy it. Were there other things that I didn't touch upon that you liked more? Or were there things that I talked about that you were like, Nikki, that's terrible, why would you like that circumstance? So just, yeah, leave me a comment, like the video, share if you want, but I'm hoping to see you all next time at Nikki Loves Books. Thanks so much.